Hey, this is Tom from MVP Chess. Welcome back to my series on Capablanca's best endings. In this video, we'll be analyzing ending number 6 that Capa played blindfolded in Havana, Cuba, 1910. So this was actually a consultation match that Capa played versus his old punching bag, Corzo, and two other dudes who you haven't heard of. By 1910, Capablanca had to play circus games like this to have any sort of challenge in his home country of Cuba. So, could Capa blindfolded beat 3 chess players simultaneously? Spoiler alert, yes. So, we picked the game up after Black's 29th move, King E8. What is going on in this position? Well, we actually have material balance, but an imbalance of material. And what I mean by that is, if we're counting up the points, both sides are even. Capablanca has 2 rooks and 7 pawns. Corzo has a rook, 2 minors, and 6 pawns. So we have material balance. But there's an imbalance on the board because Capa, in terms of the pieces, is playing versus a rook and 2 bishops. Now, normally, the 2 bishops can run circles around the rook. And usually this is a really good positional advantage for the player with the 2 bishops. However, in this position, after Capablanca's next move, f6, we see the problem here with Black's position. It's development and lack of coordination. Okay. Capablanca's rooks, as you can see, we have one posted on the 7th rank, this other ready to swoop over to the D file at a moment's notice. His rooks are very active, have very good prospects. Black's pieces are all tied up, thanks in no small part to this advanced pawn on f6. So Capa starts centralizing his king. This is a very key theme in this ending. Pay attention to, and hint, hint, look for ways to activate the king to the maximum. Okay, we always talk about using the king as an attacking piece in the ending, or as Johan Helston likes to say, king first. It's easy to say, right? It's easy to acquire that chess knowledge, but in order to implement it in the game is another matter. Watch how Capablanca does this in master fashion. We have pawn e5 by allies. Okay. A logical move, trying to get this light squared bishop into the game, getting some scope. Capa keeps improving the king, restricting the bishop, coming to g4. We have bishop c5, attacking the rook. Capa brings the rook to c7 with a double attack. And we have bishop d7. Rook d1. Okay, so we talked about this in the beginning. The scope of these rooks, how quickly they can find very active posts. We already had the rook, the hog, on the 7th rank. Now this rook swoops into the d file, threatening the bishop. If the bishop moves, the c6 pawn's going to fall, and with it, the game. So Corzo and co. had to block the d file with the bishop, but this allows Capablanca to transform the position. He plays c3 here. We have takes, king d8, and then Capablanca sacks back the exchange in order to transform the position, as I mentioned, into a rook and pawn ending. So why did Capablanca go for this transformation? We just talked about the fact that his rooks versus the 2 bishops and rook were a little bit more active. Well, it's all about the prospects of Capablanca's king. Okay. He realized that this transformation would be excellent for him, provided you find White's next move. So I'm going to throw it over to you. Pause your videos and try to find the game continuation. So if you found rook takes d4, I'm afraid that's a bit hasty, a bit inaccurate. Okay, it's very tempting to grab this pawn. These are the type of faux pas I make in my online games all the time. See a pawn, take a pawn, but this would be way too hasty because king e6 cedes king position to black. Okay, we have king f4, but after h6, nice move by black. This would undermine Capablanca's structure on the king side and also activate this rook dangerously on the h file. Okay, if you try to keep things together, okay, in this position, white's threatening mate in 1. Black has a series of moves with tempo to push back white's king and turn the tables. Now black's king is more active, and Kappa's pawns on f6 and h2 would be critically weak. That's why in this position, the key move, and congratulations if you found this, is pawn to e5. Okay, it's a clearance move. It's all about paving the way for this king to infiltrate black's position and also put a lot of pressure on these pawns on the way there. So we have c5, seems like a critical move from black, right? That's why it was so tempting to capture that pawn on d4 on the previous move, because black had this move, but Kappa doesn't care. Okay, he's willing to give up a pawn for king activity. This is shades of Kappa's game against Tartakower in New York 1924, which, of course, hasn't occurred yet. This is 14 years before it, and I'm sure we'll get to that game eventually in the series, but Kappa even understood at a very young age, way back in 1910, rook and pawn endings are all about rook activity, king activity. It's okay to give up material if you can get super active with your king and rook, and that's exactly what happened with Kappa here. We have c6, and once again, rinse and repeat, Kappa goes for the same idea, pawn to e6, boom, giving up another pawn. It's another clearance idea, this time vacating the e5 square for the king. We have takes and king e5. Look what Kappa has managed to achieve. This is remarkable. Okay, he's given up material, but he has his king on e5, whereas black's king is only on c6. This, ladies and gentlemen, is a decisive amount of king activity in the endgame. King d7, trying to keep everything together, and then Kappa finds a really nice move to stretch black's defenses beyond saving. So I'll turn it over to you for the last time. White to move. What awesome move did Kappa find in this position? Pause your videos. So Corzo and Co., allies as they like to be called, has a pretty decent pawn majority here on the queen side, but Capablanca can obliterate it and turn it into a chronic weakness with one move. Pawn to b4, boom. Awesome move, another pawn sacrifice. Okay, this time if you take it, the rook's gonna crash through on d4, you can grab on b4, game over. But now, black can't keep these two weaknesses under control, okay? Kappa's threatening to take on c5. Of course, first things first, he plays h4 to keep everything nice and protected. So then Corzo comes back to try to keep c5 defended. But then after pawn to h6, black resigned. Kappa's got this 3-on-1 kingside pawn majority that he's going to just push up the board. He's also got ideas of taking on c5, crashing through on d4. Don't forget, this pawn on e6 is very weak. So understandable why black resigned in this position. Wow, what a beatdown. Keep in mind, Capablanca did all of this blindfolded. Unbelievable. This is really a model endgame, though, in terms of king activity for me. This isn't a game that I had necessarily studied very often before starting this series, but it's one that I'm definitely going to be showing in my lectures and then to my students. This is a really great example of activity above all else in rook and pawn endings. It's okay to give up a pawn, even two, if you can get your king into position like this. Thanks for Kappa for showing us the way 115 years ago. Well, hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget, if you haven't done so already, smash that subscribe button, join Team MVP. I will see you again for game number 7. Have a great rest of your day. Take care. Bye.